Good morning, everyone. This is Frank Cortese from FMT Consultants. I'm one of the senior account executives here, and I wanted to introduce you to our webinar today, a roadmap for SharePoint 2016. Pramod Nathan is going to be doing the presentation, but before we get there, I just wanted to say a few words for those of you who may not know anything about FMT. So there we go. So just a little bit on FMT. We have completed over 1,000 projects successfully. We celebrated our 20th anniversary this past May. We now have well over 280 clients in the US and Canada. Of course, there are a large concentration here in California. We have now over 80 team members, and we have offices in both Carlsbad and Los Angeles. And just a few things I wanted to say about FMT. We call them the FMT differentiators. And I'll let you read these, but I do want to comment on the first one. We believe, and believe passionately, that we believe bring a combination of talent, experience, and methodology and dedication to your success. We have full service offerings. We have context with many of the other Microsoft platforms, even though today we'll be talking about SharePoint. And another differentiator to be aware of is our SSS department, what we call Solutions, Support, and Services. One of the few Microsoft partners actually in the state to provide our own technical support with service level agreements beyond the consulting that we do. And again, just to segue from there, why FMT? Again, I'll allow you guys to read this, but as I mentioned, in business for 20 years, a lot of integrated service offerings, in-house help desk and ongoing support, full W-2 employees, and again, something we'll integrate as we speak. We can talk and converse about the other Microsoft platforms as well, but today we'll be focusing on SharePoint and SharePoint 2016. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Pramod Nathan. He's one of our senior architects here, and he is going to tell you a little bit about himself, and then we're going to go ahead and begin. And one last thing I should mention, there's a chat window that we're watching, so any questions that may come up as you're watching this, please type them in, and we'll try to get those questions in and also watch our time with that. So please, if there are questions, just put them in that chat window. Thank you, and let me introduce you to Pramod Nathan.
Hi folks, thanks for coming to the webinar. I'm really excited to show you all about SharePoint, just a little bit about me and what I've done with SharePoint so far. I've done a lot of work with collaboration using SharePoint as a communication and information platform. Some of the cool things that you can do with SharePoint other than the document management system, which is kind of your basis of SharePoint, is process automation, and that we've had a lot of experience in. I've done a lot of work with that to get the ROI of SharePoint up and running, and then use SharePoint as a business intelligence surface. And by that I mean SharePoint doesn't do all your business intelligence work necessarily, but it surfaces all your business intelligence, so it allows folks to actually get to the information as they need to from wherever they are. So let's talk about what we're going to talk about, which is SharePoint 2016 and the roadmap for SharePoint 2016. So we're going to talk about the improved features for the end users on the SharePoint solution, which is on-premise. Then we're going to talk about SharePoint Online and the features that are available for the users there. Then we'll talk about the infrastructure and performance enhancements for on-premise. Then we'll talk finally about why you need to move to 2016 and the planning that you would go into to move to 2016 as you move forward. All right, so without further ado, let's get this started. So before I get into the end user features over here, just want to let everybody know of how Microsoft got to SharePoint 2016. Before this, in 2013, they finally decided that they were going to have SharePoint Online, and they hosted all of their SharePoint infrastructure. What happened? They finally had to eat their own dog food, and when that happened, they decided that they're going to turn their dog food into a gourmet meal. So taking all of these insights, they've worked really, really hard into providing a good, solid SharePoint 2016 platform that's actually really lean, has some really good features available both on the IT side and on the end user feature side. And we're going to talk about those. So because of that, you have some of the experiences that you're going to see on SharePoint. They're very, very hybridized. In fact, Microsoft and most of the solution providers out there that are not Microsoft are going cloud first. Why? Because a couple of reasons. One, it allows them to provide the level of solution that they're supposed to provide. And they do this by having a certain amount of control on it. So this is something that is then translated into the SharePoint on-premise solutions, and you'll see those end-user features very soon. Secondly, in terms of SharePoint, Microsoft has moved away a little bit from being very document-centric, which is what SharePoint was. Every action that you worked on was on a document. We're moving away from that into people-centric file storage. So that means, what do I do on a daily basis? How do I, as a person, interact with this document given my role? What is my network inside of SharePoint? What is my network inside of Office 365, in fact? And how do I get insights from that? So this is how SharePoint is evolving at this point. So let's look at the problems that Microsoft took a look at and tried to solve a little better with SharePoint 2016. And as the product evolves, they'll obviously try to get better at all of these things. The first thing was getting information. How am I actually getting information from SharePoint? So the Office graph system, that's definitely helped in terms of you figuring out where the solutions are. And again, this is available only on the cloud or on a hybrid system at this point. But the search solution is also something that's central to getting that information. Second question that we all face today is, how do we put information into SharePoint? So questions around those have to do with sizing, have to do with the type of data that you put in there, whether those are videos, whether those are audio files, or whether those are just plain old documents. The next problem that people who are using SharePoint face are, now that you have everything on SharePoint, how do I make my processes more efficient? So how do you use SharePoint as an efficiency multiplier? And this could be done in multiple ways. One, either process automation or presentation of the information to a lot of people, therefore improving how you communicate to your folks. And this is SharePoint, so there are probably 1,000 other ways to provide efficiencies within SharePoint. And finally, once you have all of that data either electronically available or available within SharePoint, how do you provide business intelligence with SharePoint as a platform? So these are the type of questions that SharePoint 2016 has tried to tackle. So let's look at the end-user focus and end-user feature. End-user focused features. So Microsoft has gone very cloud first in their solutions. When we talk about SharePoint 2016 at this point, it's almost impossible to talk about it in a vacuum because there are so many other products that go along with it. A big part of it is the Office 365 solutions. So what we see now is that we're going to talk about a few of those features like your knowledge management, Delve, Microsites, video portals, the hybrid search, Power BI, Sway, and OneDrive for Business. Now, some of these we're not going to go into, like Power BI and OneDrive for Business, but really you can't talk about the SharePoint 2016 or SharePoint Online experience without talking about these other products. So let's talk about just the SharePoint on-premise improvements. Well, what are they? Firstly, there were a few complaints about file name length. You're only allowed 56 characters in your file name at this point in SharePoint 2013. There are some character restrictions as to what you can put in the file name. So ampersands were one of the things that were causing issues. And some of those character restrictions have been removed to make it easier for folks to start using SharePoint on a day-to-day basis. Your view thresholds, which is something that was causing a little bit of a pain on the solutions, that has been increased by using auto-indexing. Now, this is a good and a bad thing almost, because your view threshold really, from a end user point of view, should never ever be above 5,000 items. Because on SharePoint, you can see 30 items on a given page. Maybe you go 2 or 3 pages deep. At that point, you've seen 90 items. So really, your view should never be above 90 items. The reason why they've increased the view threshold is because some users were complaining that after their item limit went above the 5,000 items, it appeared that they couldn't, it appeared that their data had vanished because they couldn't see the items anymore. So in order to kind of ameliorate that issue, they have provided for automatic indexing. And we'll go into that when I go into a demo right after this. The final kind of piece that they've put into the user interface is the use of the right click. So that is, again, something that we've used on Windows a lot. So that's something that they've naturally transitioned into SharePoint to allow the end users to use their keyboard and mouse as they naturally would. So let's just jump into that demo really quick. So this is SharePoint 2016 on the beta. So this is the SharePoint 2016 beta 2. And as you can see, this is a document library. It actually looks really, really similar to SharePoint 2013, which is a good thing in terms of your folks who are already on 2013 or already on SharePoint Online and need to transition. There isn't any drastic changes over here, so you don't have to work with them in terms of change management quite a lot. So originally, when you had to go and figure out the properties of this item, you would have one click and then a second click, and then you would go into the properties of this particular item. Now, it's different. I can just go in on the item, and I can right-click, and I'll have the properties or any of the other options that were available to me that were in the context menu originally. So that was the first kind of cool feature that makes usability really easy and intuitive. Second thing, and this is something that folks didn't use a lot, is the indexed items. So one of the ways to go above your 5,000 view threshold was by indexing your columns properly. So what does that actually mean? Well, it means that the SQL server that actually hosted the list of items on this particular library needed to be indexed properly so it could retrieve all of those items in a fast and efficient manner. If it didn't do that, it would actually lock that database out, and you wouldn't have access to your stuff, which would create the problems that you saw previously. So the way around that in 2013 was to manually index certain columns that you would then put your views on. And this was probably a very, very good way if you used it, but not a lot of people used it. So what Microsoft did was, in the document library, if you go to the library and library settings, in the advanced settings, all the way at the bottom here, you can see automatic index management. And this is turned on by default. So it's not that you have to go into every library and turn it on. It just helps you in terms of maintaining your view performance. So if you have any questions around that, please shoot them over. If not, we will continue with the presentation. All right. Next piece is durable links. So a little bit of a background on durable links. Basically, the issue that was faced here was that if I had a particular document and I named it XYZ, and I sent the link over to Frank, who is with me right here, he decides to make a change, and poor Frank doesn't know SharePoint too well, so he decides that instead of changing the version or saving it as a new version, he's going to change the name of it, and he's going to call it XYZ_Frank. What happens? The link doesn't work anymore. So in order to go around that problem, we now have durable links. Now, what durable links allows you to do, so this is an example. So you have your lorem ipsum .docx. Let's go ahead and change that to lorem ipsum .x final. Now, the links for these two documents will be exactly the same. So that link that I have sent over to Frank in this case, it will be exactly the same. And that's pretty cool because now that link is going to be available for you, whether you change the name of the document or whether you move it, actually. So these are a couple of features that are going to help you in terms of using the links in your Outlook when they come to you, and in terms of pushing forward with using SharePoint as a very, very strong content management system. There is a caveat to this. This needs the Office Online server, which is the new counterpart to the Office Online, which is the counterpart to the Office Web Apps. So what was Office Web Apps in 2013 has now become the Office Online server. So be aware of that you won't get durable links unless you have the Office Online server. It does have some implications for your records management folks out there, or any C-level folks who need to be aware of compliance. Well, if you have links that don't go away when you replace them, you have to keep in mind that links and hiding things aren't going to keep things secure, which is a really poor way of security anyways. So you need tighter governance around things now. All right, a couple of new sites. Well, actually 3 new sites available: sensitive information discovery, in-place hold, and document deletion policy center. So what is the commonality between this? Commonality between this is that they're all compliance-based. It seems like the records management folks have been very, very vocal in terms of getting Microsoft to listen and telling them, you know what, SharePoint is not really an enterprise content management system, or it's not a document management system, which, I can buy that argument because it was very, very difficult to do things like in-place hold, to do things like actually have a policy for deletion, for retention, and for actually making sure that your data doesn't get lost. So these sites that are now available, you can create deletion policies, you can create policy templates, and you can assign them across sites and site collections from a central location, which is a really, really cool feature. So these compliance tools, we're hoping will get you away from using SharePoint just as a file repository to making it a truly compliant document management system or enterprise content management system. All right. We have talked a lot about SharePoint and a lot about hybrid. So we really need to ask, is it all hybrid, or is there hype and hybrid? Well, with SharePoint on-premise, you can definitely do a lot. We've already seen quite a few features that help you in terms of usage. It helps your end users in terms of getting to things that they want to. It helps you in terms of governance and compliance. I'll be talking about a few things for the IT folks coming down the road. But what does the hybrid solution really give you? Well, Microsoft talks a lot about experiences, so let's go over a few of those. The reason why I'm talking about hybrid so much is because really on-premise, in my mind, has become just part of the SharePoint experience. Yes, SharePoint is a product, but at the end of the day, we have to look at this from the business user point of view. They're not looking to go buy a solution, a technical solution. Their business users have to go out there and buy a solution that solves their business problem. And SharePoint Online plus SharePoint on-premise provides that type of solution for them. So your hybrid search, which has your SharePoint Online and on-premise in 2016 on the single page in terms of the end user point of view is really, really cool. Then you have your Delve solutions available, which are online, and they're going to be online coming up shortly. You'll see Delve. I'll be doing a demo around that. Then you'll see some of the cool new things that are promised but not yet out there, which are boards, microsites, and videos, although boards are kind of part of Delve right now. And then there are the other things, the other products that are part of Office 365 that are, part of the SharePoint experience almost, that are part of that sharing experience. Your OneDrive for Business, Power BI, Sway. And finally, when it comes to hybrid, you're always going to get your updates first in the cloud. You're going to get all your features first in the cloud. So all of that information is going to be available primarily on the cloud to you. Therefore, Microsoft is pushing hybrid, and it is probably the best way to go forward. Sorry, I see a couple of questions here, so I'm going to go ahead and see if I can answer a few of those. So the first question is, are you still showing the on-premise version new features? So not too sure what that means, but yeah, so the features are on the online version as well as the on-premise version. And then I have a second question about how do you see metadata associated with a file? Well, a lot of times metadata that's associated with a file is on the views. So if you have the columns associated with that, it's all available for you. All right. So how do you actually get to hybrid, and how do you incorporate hybrid in? It's available to you on Central Administrator in terms of incorporating hybrid to your SharePoint on-premise solutions. So for search, there's a checkbox there that allows you to incorporate your search with your on the cloud search. Your OneDrive and site features, again, it's really nothing new in terms of being able to go ahead and configure that, and there's actually pretty solid documentation around that. Now, there's a caveat to this. We've done hybrid before with apps and SharePoint add-ins, in that you have to go to an online store and get the information down to your machine. But with the new hybrid possibilities, a lot of times you're going to have to leverage ADFS. So just keep that in mind. That's an additional cost to you folks potentially if you already don't have it in place. Okay, so in terms of hybrid, let's talk about a specialized site. And this is kind of cool. You have the video sites that are available to you on SharePoint, and this is cool because I've come down to Carlsbad from LA, and we have our video folks up there, a lot of advertising agencies, a lot of folks who work in media. And today you don't really put videos a lot on SharePoint because typically we've seen that it doesn't handle that very well. So what has Microsoft done for that particular purpose? It has gone ahead and created a specialized video site for us to go ahead and put videos up onto Office 365. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So this is what a video site looks like. It's pretty cool. It all runs on HTML5. It's backed by Azure. So you can go ahead and stream the video directly.
Social collaboration capabilities via network into the Office.
So this is just a video that I uploaded that I got from the Microsoft site about Yammer. And you have streaming capabilities. You have capabilities to actually take this video and put it back onto SharePoint. And you'll also see that there are certain intelligent features around this which you might also like. So this is very much a solid video solution available for people who need to put video or files like that typically don't go into your SharePoint solutions. So just going into the details of the video solution, you have multiple permission levels available to you. You can embed the video outside of the portal, and this is cool because we have a lot of folks who want to use the video solution but want to have it restricted because they can be proprietary. They have other people work on it, like script managers and other collaboration people. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to embed the video outside of the portal and then go ahead and provide a Office 365 login. So it's very extranet friendly at this point. And then for those of you folks out there who want to maybe do something that's not available out of the box, there's REST APIs available for the video portal, so you can mess around with that. Finally, all of the video portals and all the sites that you see are completely mobile responsive, except for a couple of the pages available out there. So it's pretty cool that Microsoft is providing individualized experiences for what SharePoint doesn't provide out of the box. And that's why I always say that SharePoint from 2016 going forward, hybrid is the norm, because SharePoint itself is not going to necessarily provide you with 100% of the business solutions that you need, but Office 365 potentially will. Okay, let's talk about the Nextgen portals now. So these all build up. So a board is a part of a microsite. A microsite is what a knowledge management portal is made of. So you can think of a board as something that's similar to what you've seen in Pinterest. This is, very, very visual way of looking at things, and it's a really nice way of going about and looking at documents and who you're related to, who is following things, so on and so forth. A microsite is a way to take information, such as those boards, and put them on a page and publish them. So previously in 2013, when we saw publishing sites, they were actually very, very complex to put together and to push out. In 2016, what they're hoping to do is that the end user can go ahead and just with drag and drop, with by typing in a few web parts, although they're not really web parts, by typing some information out, they can create really, really simple websites that then become an information dissemination tool. So let's go ahead and look at a few examples of these. Now, these Nextgen portals are not yet available to us in SharePoint, but or Office 365, but they've been promised. So hopefully they'll be coming out pretty soon, and we'll be able to play with them and do a demo of them for you folks in the very near future. So this is what a board looks like. It's actually pretty cool because just look at documents in terms of what it is. Into the document itself. Have tags on them, which I'll do a demo on fairly soon. But they allow you to organize your data fairly quickly and share those boards with folks around you. Now, the cool thing about the boards is that you are just from OneDrive. And this is pretty cool because we do work on OneDrive, and we do want to share that information out. So again, there will be some governance risks around this, but for you, if I can find it. All right. Delve. There we go. So this is my particular Delve board, or this is my particular user profile services. As you can see, we have moved a lot away from user profile, sorry, not user profile services, but the actual My Sites. As you can see, we have moved away from My Sites being not too helpful to actually being extremely helpful. Now the documents are document-centric, are not document-centric, but they are user-centric. So these are all documents that go around me. This is my profile, which you can see, has to do with the user information, but you can see all of my recent activities, and then some of my favorite stuff around there, and you can see my people. But the cool part is my boards. So these are the things that I've already tagged on my solutions for my different clients, and you can do this for any different project that you want. And this is pretty cool because it uses the Office Graph to find out who I'm related to and what they're working on. And if I need to find out their information, I can go ahead and do that. So again, pretty cool stuff over here in terms of what they're doing with boards and how you can actually get to all of that information. All right. So let's push on to the next piece, which again is Microsites, again available on Office 365. This is almost, you can think of it as trying to push away from publishing sites as the primary information dissemination tool to these microsites being the primary information dissemination tool. So what you go ahead and you do is you create these articles that become a microsite, and I've seen a demo of this. It's fairly impressive in terms of what you can do with just dragging and dropping and typing a few things around. And the second screen that you see here is a mobile view of that microsite that has been set up, and it's automatically responsive. So you don't have to go ahead and invest a whole bunch of money into trying to make these publishing sites that are information dissemination tools responsive for the folks who are out there with their cell phones or tablets. Now, all of this information is then gathered and it turns into what's going to be promised as knowledge management. It's codenamed Infopedia at this point, and it's available to only a select few people, but it's basically a solution which is one step above your microsites. It's a full-fledged site that you can go ahead and build out with your sites, and again, pretty cool stuff. Yeah, it's all out of the box responsive. All right. Now, for any IT folks that are out there, let's talk about what's in this for you. It's actually pretty cool in terms of what is available, in terms of the boundaries and limits, what SharePoint's actually done to get you better uptime and better caching, and then finally, in terms of operations, what Microsoft has done to help you folks with it. All right. First problem with SharePoint 2010, 2013 was the size of the content database was 200 gigs. At the Ignite conference, it was decided that, or it was declared that the content database sizing will be in the terabytes, which is amazing and great because Microsoft has done quite a few things with the SQL backend that will help you in terms of getting that content database sizing up. Does it mean that it's automatic and automagic? No, it's not. To get the sizing into the terabytes, there will be some IT investment that has to go into this. A lot of it has to do with making sure that you folks move away from your current drives to solid-state drives. That type of investment will have to be done to push you into the terabyte capacity for your content databases. The next piece may not be as interesting to some of the folks because really not a lot of us have 100,000 site collections per content database, but it really does speak to the sizing and the optimization that Microsoft has done with the content databases for 2016 and moving forward. Having 100,000 site collections is actually a pretty impressive feat, and that's something that they've had to do because they hosted all these site collections with their SharePoint Online. So they've taken all of that pain and they've converted it into a really, really good on-premise platform. We've already talked about the list threshold and how that's being increased. Again, that's being increased because of the automatic indexing that's available to you. The max file size is increased from 2 GB up to 10 GB. There were some questions around, well, if I put a 10 GB file up there, how fast is it going to get uploaded? We did a couple of tests, well, actually, as early as late as last night. File uploads are really fast now, but do you want to really put something that's 10 GB into SharePoint? At this point, I would almost want to say no. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. So there are definitely some things that we're going to have to explore once we get our hands on the full version of SharePoint and we stretch it out on different scenarios. Finally, indexing items. You have 500 million items, so that are indexed in search, and you have hybrid search. So at this point, you're fairly good. If you have more than 500 million items, then it's actually quite a problem. You may have to come to us, and we can help you toss about half of those out at least. All right. So let's talk about better uptime and performance, and what Microsoft has done to push better uptime and performance. You've probably seen this over and over again in terms of min roles and what Microsoft calls min role enforcement, in that every server has a role. So Microsoft calls it the web front end and the application server and the distributed cache server. But really what the web front end is a server that services end user requests. What the robot service or the application service is a server that services things like timer jobs and things that don't need low latency but need a lot of kind of horsepower behind it. So the min role allows you to, or allows you to let the installer install the services that are required for these particular roles, and then it expects you to stay within the configuration of that role because you've told it that it's optimized for this particular service. And all of this again came about because Microsoft decided to put everything, put SharePoint on the cloud, and they learned a lot in terms of how you should optimize a server and how do you get low latency and how do you get high throughput on certain things. So by conforming to these different roles, what you're going to get in your central administration is whether things are in compliance and whether they're not. So when you're on a web front end, if you go ahead and you put in central administration on there, or if you put user profile services, that server is going to be out of compliance because those things are burdening the service, are burdening the SharePoint solution without there being a need to do so. Now going back to distributed going back to these servers, specialized roles, that's something that you would use if you don't want the web front end or the application server or the distributed cache split out. If you decide that you needed some special solution or you want to stick with a solution that has hybridized roles in them. And by hybridized roles, I mean web front end plus application services on the same server. One of the things that you'll notice here is that distributed cache is split out. And that is something that is definitely going to help in terms of making sure that you folks are getting the responsiveness that you need, and you're getting the file I/O that you need. So distributed cache splitting out, I definitely agree with what they've done there. But again, that means you need an additional server on there. What have they done next in terms of better uptime and performance? First thing, fewer patches, which is going to be really cool. So only 2 patches and 2 MSPs are promised, and then only 1 per language patch, which is way lower than 2013 and 2010, which was, you had Service Pack 1, Service Pack 2, cumulative updates, God knows what else. Just it was very, very difficult to actually make sure that everything was patched and up to date. And when everything needed to be patched, you actually had to bring down the servers, which Microsoft is now saying that you won't have to do. So there would be 0 downtime patching, which will hopefully push us into that 3949 scenario without having to do a whole lot on the back end in terms of mirroring and having redundant servers and so on and so forth to ensure your high availability, your your low downtime. Finally, we just talked about the separated distributed cache, but they've also improved the distributed cache. So it will still rely on App Fabric, but they've reduced the Active Directory chatter, which will hopefully make everything faster in terms of that end user perspective. And it will mean that your distributed cache won't crash moving forward, which it used to do a lot before. Finally, operations. In terms of telemetry and insight, all you IT folks are familiar with this. Something happened to SharePoint. How do you go and find it? You go, you look at the logs, you look at the GUID, you try to map the GUID back to the problem. It was a mess. Now imagine doing that for everybody who is on the cloud, which is what Microsoft had to do. That is a big, big problem. So what did they do? They created some really cool dashboards that map all of these GUIDs onto dashboards for you. Some of the diagnostics that you see there, all of that's available to you now on the cloud. So all you need to do when you're setting up your SharePoint solution is you take your diagnostics, you link them up to your cloud solution, and now you have hybrid analytics available where your logs up with 60 than were available to you before. What's also being promised is real-time telemetry and real-time reporting, which we had right now. So this type of insight that will be available to the IT folks will hopefully push the usage and will help make SharePoint robust, and it will help you solve any issues that come down the road. All right, so let's go to the final pieces of the presentation. So, why SharePoint? Well, there is a website out there called User Voice, and Microsoft has really listened in terms of what the users need, and also what the IT folks need. So there's definitely better boundaries in terms of the content databases and the file storage solutions, so on and so forth. There is also better SharePoint on-premise solution. Now, the online solutions are very solid, and they require minimal IT upkeep. So that's one of the reasons it would make sense to push to maintaining their solutions. And then Microsoft is going cloud first. Microsoft is going mobile first. So moving down the road, as we start using phones more as computers, well, let's talk about who you are. Are you new to SharePoint? Have you actually invested in SharePoint? Are you in 2010, 2013? Depending on these scenarios, we'll have to talk about what you need to do to get to Q2 of 2016 and decide, okay, we are now ready to push into 2016 or or SharePoint Online. So in terms of investments, I've kind of divided this into three different categories: your green, your oranges, and your reds. Greens being if you're using SharePoint just kind of out of the box as an information dissemination tool or a file repository. You folks are really easy to move because you haven't done a lot of customization. The folks that are using this, what I would call medium level heaviness, which is, I guess, a poor way to put it, but if you have customizations in terms of document management, in terms of content management, so you're using, a third-party solution to manage your content or to put your retention in place, yes, there's a certain amount of pain that you're going to have to go through to push this solution into a SharePoint Online solution. Now, your enterprise content management, things that have heavy compliance around it. If you have a lot of information that's surfaced through SharePoint by a lot of different interfaces or a lot of different integration points, then a hybrid solution is probably going to be your best bet in terms of getting your on-premise solution up and running and all your data connections in there, and then utilizing your SharePoint Online features to take advantage of the features that are available out there. Okay, this is a question we get a lot, so I thought we would kind of get it out of the way. Is SharePoint safe? So SharePoint at this point and Office 365 have a lot of certificates, have a lot of compliance around them. It's HIPAA certified. It has ISO security benchmarks. There are just a lot of there's a lot of compliance around Office 365. I would be hard pressed to recommend any other data center, or to tell you that any other data center, whether you own it or whether it's someone that you're getting services from. I would be hard pressed to tell you that they have the same amount of certifications and the same transparency that Microsoft has. Above and beyond this, you have optional privacy and contractual supplements. So I actually feel bad for Microsoft for this, because over and over again I've heard from people that Microsoft is not safe, and for Microsoft they're going out there and getting all of these certificates, and they're being the champion of trying to tell you how good they are in terms of security, and I'm still hearing stories about them not being safe, but I haven't heard of a single security breach from Microsoft. So that should tell you a little bit about how safe Microsoft is, and that you can rely on them to keep your things safe. So let's go into this. Are you new to SharePoint? So if you're new to SharePoint, what are you using currently? That's some of the things that you need to think about. Are you still stuck with your old files kind of sitting around? Are you using network locations, or is your business kind of running ahead and using some Franken monster that's Google solutions plus Dropbox plus something else? If it is, then you need to figure out what your goals are. Is it collaboration? Is it process automation? Is it business intelligence? And then what I would highly recommend you do is you go in and you do a SharePoint deployment planning services, which is something that you can either pay out of your pocket or get Microsoft vouchers to pay for, and that will lay out a business plan for you for SharePoint. One of the things you can do is use OneDrive to replace your file share. We've had a lot of success with that. People seem to like it because there is the privacy for your personal file. Well, not really privacy, but it's not out there for your entire company, for the files that you're currently working on, and then you can publish or push those files off to a shared location. Then if you're new to SharePoint, you need to think about SharePoint as an intranet, SharePoint as an extranet for collaboration. And then we've talked about a few things around the cloud and hybrid. So if you are new to SharePoint, definitely think about those things. But before you start thinking about them, collect data about where your files are, what those files are, how much of that do you have. Also think about what processes you want to automate. All of these things can and should be done in SharePoint. If you're in SharePoint 2010 on-premise, in terms of migration, you first need to migrate to 2013. That changes all the databases to the new database specifications and schemas, and then you can migrate that from 2013 to 2016. What you need to do next really is analyze your business needs. We are going mobile first with all the people out there, using their mobile phones for business use. How are people using search? Are they actually finding the documents that they need to find? These are the questions that you need to ask, because at this point, SharePoint Server 2010, which was a solid solution, is 5 years in the past. So definitely look at that and analyze what new needs you have. In terms of getting from 2010 to 2016, you then need to look at your customizations in terms of what functional customizations you have and what user requirements, what user interface customizations you have. And if you have that, we need to analyze how do we get you from those customizations into 2016, because if they're farm solutions or if they are solutions that can't go on the cloud, we may have to give you a pathway to that, whether it is to push to the cloud only and give you the out-of-the-box solutions, or whether to keep you on the premise solutions and give you a hybrid solution. All right, so SharePoint 2013 on-premise. So content database migration, easy. You're already on this pretty similar schema. You can just do a content database detach and reattach if you're going to stay on premise. If you're going on the cloud, you're going to have to push all that information on the cloud, and that's available through one of our partners who we work with. In terms of customizations, that's something that we need to look at fairly closely, because what we've seen a lot with SharePoint 2013 is that it was a very, very robust platform, and it is a very robust platform. What happens with robust platforms? You want to shine it up. You want to make it look good. So there were a lot of customizations in terms of user interfaces. Things like farm solutions were put in on SharePoint 2013. So what we need to do is go ahead and analyze and see whether those solutions need to exist or they can be replaced with some of the new things that we've seen with 2016. Again, you need to go back and analyze and see those net new solutions. Just because you're on 2013 doesn't mean your business is extremely happy with it. Maybe some of them are using Dropbox for some odd reason. Maybe some of them are using some other solution that SharePoint doesn't provide. So it's contingent upon, the IT folks, it's contingent upon the operations folks to have a proper conversation about how they can, on the needs of the business, so that we can bridge the gap and potentially push into either a SharePoint Online or a hybrid solution. All right, if you're on SharePoint Online, like it or not, you're getting SharePoint 2016, so congratulations. There's a lot coming down the pipeline, so you may need a guided tour with a Microsoft partner. That's something that we definitely provide, but you definitely need to be aware of the solutions that are in offerings. These things are changing on a weekly basis almost in terms of the new solution offerings. So this is one of the webinars that we're offering, but we're potentially going to be doing this, again in a couple of months because things change. One of the things you need to be aware of is if you're on SharePoint Online and you've made a lot of customizations to that, come 2016, when Microsoft pushes those things to you, some things may break. So catalog all the solutions. Try to, once you've cataloged all those solutions, see which of those solutions can be moved into the new out-of-the-box solutions. And as much as you can, try to focus on those out-of-the-box solutions and then see what business requirements can be solved with those out-of-the-box solutions, because you're paying for them. You might as well use them. Finally, prepare your user base and administrators for the switch. It's going to be a pretty drastic switch. Someone's going to right-click and discover this. Why not tell them ahead of time that there's a right-click, there are videos, there are all these cool new features. Might as well prepare them. All right, a few things to watch out for in terms of SharePoint 2016. So for IT professionals, no more STS admin. So if you had a lot of scripts running before an STS admin, can't do that anymore. User profile service doesn't use Forefront Identity Manager anymore. We actually tested this out. Turns out, in terms of AD import, that's a fantastic thing, because now the AD import is ridiculously fast. It took me less than 3 seconds to import our development AD. So that has about 160 profiles, 190 profiles plus, not a lot, but still less than 5 seconds. Pretty impressive. Now, if you do want bidirectional synchronization, you have to install something separately. So that's something that you're going to have to do on a separate server. There is no more free SharePoint Foundation, so something you need to be aware of. For some reason, they decided not to lay plans out for InfoPath yet. I think there's something still in the books, so still something hatching up there in Microsoft. We just need to wait. So we still have, end-of-life support till 2023. And then there's a SharePoint Designer 2016. They decided not to build it, so the 2013 is still usable. It's still available. And I don't believe 2016 is going to come out, but just something to watch out for. Finally, for the decision makers, Microsoft has gone with a very, very strong cloud direction. It really is very, very highly compliant at this point. They have specialized data centers for government, specialized data centers for law enforcement. So I think the decision makers are going to have a tough decision to make in terms of really figuring out, do they need to stay on-premise, and can they actually define why they need to stay on-premise, and work with their legal teams to understand why they need to stay on-premise, or whether they can push on the cloud, or do a little bit of a hybrid. Why would you do a hybrid? Integration needs. If you have a lot of line of business kind of services that you're using, if you have some GP, if you have some CRM on-premise already that integrates with SharePoint, yeah, absolutely, keep it on there, keep it hybrid. You don't want to mess with things that are not broken. If you have file size needs that you decide that can't be handled with SharePoint Online, then that's something that you want to go with a hybrid solution for. And finally, business intelligence needs that can't be, at this point, solved with hybrid. That's information in cubes, SSAS reports, SSRS reports, things of that nature. So these are the few things that the decision makers are going to have to take into consideration going into 2016. That is the end of my presentation. So thank you very much for being here. And if you have any questions, I will hand this over to Frank.
Well, thank you everyone for your attention today. That was kind of a power-packed hour there, and we had some questions up front, but I don't see any right now. We can hang a couple of minutes to see if there are any additional questions. We're checking it right now. We don't see any, so we'll probably be putting portions of this slide deck, I believe, probably on our website at some future point. So if there are any questions, please give us a call. We'd be happy to chat with you about the things Pramod has gone over, about roadmaps and decisions to make about. With that, I want to thank everyone and have a good.
Thank you.